Hello, everybody. Please give me a big thumbs up in the chat if you can hear me loud and clear. Let me know. Let me know if you can hear me. Hello, hello, hello. Good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're listening, whenever you're listening. What I want to say is this first and foremost. Please hit that like button. It really does help us out in the chat. Please hit that like button. It really does help us out. Thank you so much for that. So today we're going to be doing agency. Good morning. Yeah, I know we're straddling the line of morning and afternoon, all that kind of stuff. So, like I said, today we're going to be doing laws of agency. So if you do have any questions, please feel free to type it into the chat. I'd be more than happy to try to answer them for you. Also keep in mind, you know what? It's time for some housekeeping, time for some shameless plugs. Remember our crash courses. We have a bunch of them that you can sign up for. Whoa, holy Toledo. So we have appraisals this upcoming weekend. Yeah. And then you have Maria doing finance and a national course in the coming month. And I'm going to be doing a Cali. Oh, wish they all could be California girls, right? I'm doing a Cali crash course on the 11th. So I wanted to just let everyone know that if you're watching this real time before any of those pop up, head on over to the crash course section. We do have a bunch of them coming up. And we'll always remind you. So, hey, even if you're watching this on recording sometime live in the future, okay, hello to you. But what I want to say is this first and foremost. If you just go over to the crash course section, you'd be able to check whatever our upcoming dates are. These are our upcoming ones. I know we updated it, I think, this past week, so that's why I wanted to remind everybody, because some of us were basically asking. And someone asked a question that actually is a good one before I get started. When should I taste the crash course? I think you mean take a crash course. That just made me chuckle a little bit. But when should you take a crash course? So what happens is these are basically comprehensive kind of crammers. Okay, and I don't want to say crammer, but kind of like a refresher. So I like taking this basically when you have gotten to a point where you have consumed all of the information. You're getting ready. So it's basically between that time of when you've completed your schoolwork through to when you're prepping for the test. So anytime there in between, it would be appropriate. So that's the situation when it comes to that. I think that it's really kind of somewhere that fits in line with that. Because remember, these are refreshers. These are kind of they're much more drawn out than our half-hour courses. So basically think of it as a more comprehensive version of what we do during the week. Okay, where we can only touch on so many things, especially when we get winded. I do sometimes longer housekeepings like this to answer questions like that, but also to remind you that this is available to you, because a lot of people also say, "Hey, Stu, I didn't know that actually existed." So now you know where it is and all that jazz. So great question though too. Thank you for that, and thank you for the chuckle. So let's jump into laws of agency. So the first question reads this. The fiduciary duty of full disclosure requires the seller's agent to tell the seller anything that might be useful that might be of use in negotiations, obey all the seller's lawful instructions, advise a buyer about how much the seller is likely to accept for the property, or advertise the listed property frequently. Okay. So someone asked the question, do you have a how to apply for your state and national exam tutorial? No, because every state is super different, some more frustrating than others. I would love to. Actually, you know what? I might. Okay, that's not a bad idea. I might kind of bury that somewhere. I might do something. So kind of put a push pin in that. I might not have anything right now, but that's not an awful idea. So a lot of you are tossing up between, listen. I need you to do this. Everyone, so you're tossing up between A and B. I think that's the consensus that we have from the live chat. Okay? What I'm going to tell you is this. I want you to read the question. Okay? Read the question. What is it asking you? Okay? Because not what you think it's asking you. Think about that. Not what you think it's asking you. Not something that might be factual. Okay? Not something that might be factual, but what happens is what is the question asking? The question is specifically referring to the fiduciary duty of full disclosure. Boom, boom. Fiduciary duty of full disclosure has nothing to do with obedience. If this said obedience, we would be all about B. We'd be all about B. Okay? See, what happens is this. B is a fiduciary duty. B is a fiduciary duty. So obey all of the seller's lawful instructions. That's correct. You should under obedience. But this is saying specifically full disclosure. The fiduciary duty of disclosure requires an agent to tell the seller anything that would be useful during negotiations. We have to understand there might be things that are not necessarily incorrect, but incorrect statements in regards to what is being asked of you. Okay? Someone said not cool, but that is what it says. So here's the thing. I mean, what I always say is this. Don't complicate the question, okay? Don't complicate the question. So what happens is this. So someone said, what's an example? So let me give you an example. So this is actually something that I teach during a lot of my ethics classes and, for agents who are actually practicing once they get licensed. Because I'm doing a ton of continuing education right now for agents once they get licensed. So here's an example, okay? Let's say I have a listing, okay? Let's say I have a listing. And so let me ask you this real quick. Someone said that my voice has feedback. Thumbs up if my voice is beautiful. Thumbs down if I'm having feedback or any echo. Let me know. I don't want to have misery in the chat. Thumbs up if I'm good. Thumbs down if I'm bad. Okay. All right, I have a bunch of thumbs up. So, yeah, if I'm hosting an open house and a buyer who's interested in the property, okay, a buyer who is interested in the property says to me, knowing that I'm the seller's agent, I would definitely pay, okay? I would definitely pay, let's say, $5,000 over asking price to the seller, okay? Well, what happens is this. It's a situation where I have to disclose that to the seller. So basically, disclosure means that anything that is going to be used in negotiations has to be disclosed to them that I get. So basically, I am an earpiece, okay, to the seller, okay? So if I am the seller's agent, I owe a fiduciary duty of disclosure to the seller. That buyer, okay, is in a situation where what happens is this. That buyer, okay, is going to be a situation where what happens is this. They are required to basically have the agency relationship that I have explained to them. That's why we have to have agency disclosure, okay? And it's a situation where what happens is this. We have to disclose it, but then once we disclose it, our fiduciary duty of disclosure is to the seller. Does that make sense? Okay. So let me see in the chat if there's anything going on, because I see an oh my, oh no. Oh yeah, that's something else. I won't talk about that. Okay. So that being said, let's go ahead. Let's take a look at the next question, shall we? The main obligation the principal owes a broker is accounting, confidentiality, obedience, or compensation. What say you in the chat? And this is another one. Read the question. Know who is who and what is what, okay? Gotta know the difference. Yeah, Christina said, yeah, the more I looked at the question, the more you realize that it's A in the last one. Yeah, that's why I'm saying, you know, that's the situation there. Okay. That is 100% it. It's all about what the question is asking. Okay. And here's the thing, tests are not easy. That's why what I try to do whenever I jump on, listen, good old Uncle Stu, I always try to help you through the question so that you understand why you're getting it wrong. If you feel like you do have a strong grasp on the material, okay? Because what happens is sometimes when we're going through the questions, it's not really our grasp of the material, it's our application of it and how we answer those questions, okay? So Uncle G said, who is the principal? The principal is the client. Yeah. So the client's obligation to a broker who is the agent. So the client's obligation to a broker would be compensation. So that's why a lot of times what happens is this. So if you're in the struggle bus, listen, I'm going to talk to a specific set of you right now for a second, okay? If you're on the struggle bus and you feel like that you've been studying and you understand the material, and what happens is you're not making that connection where maybe you failed a couple times, okay? That's common. That's A-okay. There's nothing wrong with that. That's why, listen, one of the reasons why Stu has a job, okay? Because the tests are not easy. Because what happens is it's really about our test-taking skills. And really, there's no way to really brush up on that other than something I actually recommend is, going to YouTube or Google and looking up what are some reading comprehension test-taking tips. What are some great ones, And what happens is this. You will then maybe find a tip or trick or something that helps you read it better. Okay? The only difference between me and you, I'm a horrible test taker. The only difference between me and you is I've been reading the same questions and been writing the same questions for 15 years. If any of you did that, you would be amazing, wonderful, fantastic. You'd be able to grab the mic from Stu and basically teach the class. So the answer to this one, main obligation that a principal or client owes the broker or agent, okay, is compensation. Okay? So, any questions, concerns, burning desires on that from anyone who's here live in the chat? And remember, whether you're live or on recording, hit that like button. It helps us out tremendously over at the Prep Agent team. We love it. So, let's go ahead. Let's pop on the next question, okay? Brown leases a residence from Baker on a 3-month written lease. When the written lease expires, Brown retains possession of the property without the consent of Baker. Brown now holds an estate for years, periodic tenancy subject to eviction, estate at sufferance, or estate at will. Yeah, Uncle G's like, hit that like button. Yeah, I'm greedy like that. I don't have any problem. I know probably the other instructors, I don't even have to go on their webinars. I know they probably aren't as greedy as me. I love the love. I'm all about that. I have no issue asking for that. So what say you in the chat? Oh man, everyone's saying C, estate at sufferance. Yeah, absolutely, 1000%. So what I'm going to do is this. I am going to ask a question though, because I want to make sure that we know the difference between this. What is the difference between... Actually, just tell me what an estate at will is. What is an estate at will? What is that? And I had a really good morning this morning. I actually just went to go pick up my guitars. They were in the guitar shop. I don't know if everyone has ever seen a video of me where I have my guitars in the background. I have all my guitars lined up on my office wall. So, Janet said, can stay as long as you want with permission. Okay, so here's the thing. Let me make it super easy for you. You ready? Has no terms. No terms whatsoever. Okay? It's basically an estate at sufferance, but with permission. There are no terms. So let me ask you this question in the chat, okay? Let me ask you this question. Are they paying rent, yes or no? This is a super difficult one. It's a simple question, difficult. Are they paying rent, yay or nay? A lot of you were saying yes. No, what? We're so close to Valentine's Day, and you're breaking my sweet little instructor heart. You're breaking my sweet little instructor heart. You're making me sad. Yes, please change those yeses to no. And in a estate at will, they're not paying rent. Why is that? Listen to me very carefully. Listen very carefully. if you are paying rent, we have to know what you are paying rent for. So, if there is no move out date, right? If there is no move out date, then, and they're paying rent, we have to know, is that a week? Is that a month? Is that a day? And if that's the case, it is periodic then. As soon as you start paying rent, it automatically goes to, goes to a situation where it is periodic tenancy. As soon as we establish rent. So here's the thing. So here's a lot of you are saying this, okay? A lot of you are saying, so why are they staying with permission? So could you create a scenario, right? Can you create a scenario where it's an estate at will that makes sense, where they're not paying rent? So here's the thing. Couple of things, okay? An estate at will is never meant to be long-term. So a lot of you that are struggling with this be like, why would someone let someone else stay there? So let me create a scenario for you. This is real time. This is something that happens a lot, okay? I've actually done this several times as a landlord. I have a good tenant in there, and let's say it's an annual lease. They were a great tenant, great credit score. The anticipation is that they're going to move out and they're going to go be homeowners, okay? So, what happens is this, okay? Let's say it was a year-long lease, and at the end of the year-long lease, the tenants come to me and they say, Stu, we're in the process of buying a house. We don't know when the when the closing date's going to be. Can we stay? It might be a day, it might be a week, it might be a month. We don't know. And I say to them, sure, not a problem. We don't have anything established. It's just basically they're staying. Okay? So someone said, your uncle invites us to stay for 3 months. That's a defined period of time. That's an estate for years. Don't care. You just gave me a time frame. No, you got to throw the time frame out. If there is a time frame in rent, then it's either an estate for years. If there is an end date, if I know when you are moving out, it's an estate for years. I don't care how long it is. Okay? I don't care under what circumstances. If there is an end date and I know I could circle it on your calendar when you're moving out, okay, then that's an estate for years. If you are paying me rent, then we have to establish, what are you paying me rent for? You don't just pay rent. You're paying rent for a month, a day, a weekend, a week, whatever it is. Then it becomes a periodic tenancy. Okay? So an estate for years, it just basically has an end date. Doesn't matter what the time frame is. There is no time frame on it. So 4 years means for a calendar date in legalese. Okay? No end date, no rent is an estate at will. Yeah, it's not. So here's the thing. It's not meant ever to be like a long-term thing where it's just going to be something that you're going to be in that indefinitely. It's just an estate at will. We cannot define it as periodic, and we cannot define it as an estate for years. Okay? So that is literally what it is. Can you give a simple definition of an estate at will? Yeah, there's no terms, no defined terms, but it's with permission. It's the only difference between estate at sufferance, okay, and a situation where it is an estate at will is going to be a situation where there's permission. That's the only difference. Someone said this question better be on the test. Listen, here's what happens is we're going through a bunch of things that I could guarantee you, knowing the difference between all of these will help you on the test. Boom. Listen, I'm going to tell you this, okay? Little moment for me, okay? Get on my soapbox. What I'll tell you is this. Everything that comes out of my mouth is with the full intention that this is not going to be minutia. Okay? I even try to shut down stuff like the practical side of it, stuff like that. I try to put stuff that's going to be on the test and make this relevant for you. Absolutely 100% of the time. Okay? I'll take one more question, okay? And then I'm going to move on, okay? And the question is, can you simplify estate for years and periodic tenancy? They both have time frames, right? One has a move-out date, estate for years. I know when you were moving out. A periodic tenancy has a period that is established that automatically renews, and we don't know when you're moving out, okay? That's it. That's it, 100%, okay? So estate for years, I know a move-out date. Periodic tenancy, I know when their rent is due. Okay? That's the situation. Those are good questions. Yeah, this is good. It is good to know these things. Okay? So let's take a look at this next one. Which of the following is not essential to the creation of an agency relationship? Agreement to pay consideration, consent to the principal, agreement requiring representation, or competency of the parties. So which is not essential? Not essential. Someone said, I'm taking my test on Monday, anxiety is kicking in. Take a walk. Go do something that relaxes you. And also, to understand this, I'm going to say one thing. Just one thing. And then we're going to move on. My highest producing team that I coach, I mean, I'm talking highest dollar volume that I coach, they failed their test. I think the two lead guys failed it, I think, like 30-something times. Failing the test is not indicative of your success in real estate. So just do it. So listen, so if you do go into the test, worst case scenario, you fail, not a big deal. Not a big deal. Not a big deal. Not a big deal. Okay? So that's the situation there. Okay? So let's take a look at this one. We have to have agreement for representation. You have to agree to it. No one could ever force me to be someone's agent. I mean, I would love that. Someone's forcing me to work with Stu. Okay? So, agreement to pay consideration. It's not essential. It's not essential. Okay, so now here's the thing. Looking back on the questions, right? Looking back on the questions, okay? It's a situation where what happens is this. You were probably saying, so in one, it said, what is the primary obligation of a principal to an agent? So the only obligation that they would have to them is the potential to pay compensation in some manner, shape, or form, to pay them some sort of consideration, right? But we're saying, hey, what is not essential? So here's the thing. It's not that they have to pay them, but what would be their only obligation would be to pay them. But you don't need to agree to pay consideration, okay, to have an agency relationship. Not at all. And I see a bunch of people saying that they're in Long Island, New York. If you ever want to, message Stu and really warm the cockles of his heart, send me Islanders tickets. I'm a huge Islander fan. I'm actually one of the biggest Islander fans that you could ever find. So just saying, any of my Long Island people, because I mentioned that in the chat. So there's a question that came in, though. Let's look at this question, okay? Situation is this. I have a question, Stu. With an estate at will, you still pay to live there. No, nay, okay? You don't pay. Because if you're paying, we have to establish what you're paying for. Then we would have to establish a periodic tenancy, okay? That's the whole thing. It all comes down to this. Why is there no payment? Because we don't have terms. Once we put terms into it, it then goes to the question of, is there an end date or is there not? Okay? That's what it is. It's very, once you put, all of these things live in a box. Okay? All of these things live in a box, and you have to be able to understand. That's why I have very simple rules for each of those things when we're going back to the leases, right? It's a situation where each one has a simple definition. If it doesn't fit within that, okay, that's going to be a situation where 110% it doesn't work for that definition. So you have simple definitions. That's it, okay? So someone said, do we have webinars on the weekends? We typically do our crash courses on the weekends. And also we have at least I have open availability for tutoring on the weekends. So that's why usually weekends are going to be that. Don't stress about the test though, guys. Don't stress about that, okay? So let's keep it moving. Let's keep it grooving. Let's get to the next one, okay? Let's look at this one. If two parties want to create an enforceable broker-principal relationship concerning a right, title, or interest in real property, the most essential element to do so would be a purchase agreement, an agreement about the commission, an employment contract, or the authority to accept a deposit. And here's the thing. Listen, I'm getting into things that I think are going to be things that you need to clarify. If I'm clarifying stuff, and it's, the webinars are meant to inform, meant to give you an opportunity to come in here and discuss things with me in ways that you aren't usually able to when you're taking self-paced courses, And sometimes, some days, you'll be listening to Stu and you'll be like, geez Louise, ham and cheddar cheese, this is not happening for me today. It's not clicking. It's okay. It's okay. And it's also okay to say, you know what? I need to come back to this conversation a little later and maybe write it down, maybe hear it again. Okay. That's okay too. All right. But don't let that make you apprehensive or make you feel unsure about your knowledge. There are things that you don't know about the real estate, about the information that you're going to be tested on. That bottom line is, if you know it, great. If you don't, it's okay. We're not expecting you to get 100%. Okay. But don't let that make you feel unprepared. There are times when also the instructors all have their strengths too. You think there's not times when people start talking about other things that, I'm not as versed in, or it's not my specialty or my shtick, that I get confused with? Yeah, absolutely, all the time, 100%, or that I sit there and I'm like, all right, pause that conversation. I need to come back to it when my head's a little clearer. So this particular one is going to be this. If two parties want to create an enforceable broker-principal relationship concerning a right, title, or interest in real property, basically what they're referring to is a listing agreement or an employment contract. Okay? Someone said, "You're so honest, Stu. Thanks for that." Listen, I treat you like family, because I will tell you this. I love coming here and I love helping everyone, and I try to be honest, because here's the thing. When push comes to shove, I am a very direct person. It's one of the reasons why I've been so successful in business and in coaching agents. I'm very direct. It doesn't work with everybody, but I will tell you this: it is something that you need to hear a lot of what I'm saying. I try to, and all the things I do, I try to be relevant to what you're going to need to hear. Okay. What you need to hear for the test. I usually only spew things out that I think are going to be relevant. So that being said, okay, it is going to be an employment contract. Someone said we need a math webinar. I do a ton of them. There's a boatload of math on prep agent, everything. Do torture sessions. Trust me. You can have all that. Okay. So, any questions, concerns, burning desires on that? Because I'll do one more and then we'll wrap up for today. Okay? Because I have some guitars now hanging on the wall that I need to go play with. Some beauties. Some real beauties. So, one last one. If a salesperson acts as an independent contractor, then his broker will set his hours and marketing methods. He controls his own working hours. All of his listings belong to them, or his broker must withhold income tax from his commission checks. Okay? Jane said, "I love your straightforwardness." Boom. That's my East Coast New York mentality. Just yes, this is what it is. We do things very quickly. Whenever I travel to the South, I always get frustrated with how slow things move. But then I realize after like 3 days in the South, I'm like, you know what? Nah, I could do slow. I could totally do that. Frustrates my wife, though. Mrs. Stu, she wants things done in like 10 seconds. Mrs. Stu is vicious. She's vicious, New York East Coast. Okay? She's vicious. Let's see. This one is going to be, hey, if you're an independent contractor, you're going to control your own working hours, right? So someone said Miami. I was actually in Miami actually last year. It was one of my last business trips. I went down there for a conference. Really good. Really fun. It was my first time in Miami. So that being said, what I want to do is this. I want to first and foremost thank everyone for jumping on today. Thank you for being contributors in the chat. And also, too, if you're watching this on recording, listen, jump into the chat one day if you can. I know sometimes timing doesn't work out. It doesn't really happen. I try to do some morning ones, some afternoons, okay? So what happens is this. I always say jump in because we have a lot of fun, okay? Warmly welcome you into the Stu crew. As you can see, I always jump in there. I try to answer as many questions as I can that are going to be relevant. I try to address some things. And what I will say is this. For those of you who haven't jumped on and gotten through to, haven't signed up for the private tutoring or the crash courses, head on over, check that out. Like I said, there's still time to jump into Candace's valuation and market analysis crash course that she's going to be doing tomorrow. And also, if you have any questions, you can always feel free to reach out. Or, like I said, jump on the webinars. This is probably the best way to reach out to me, talk to me, say hello, tell me something interesting. Yes, please hit that like button. And everyone, have a wonderful, fantastic, safe weekend. I'll see everyone real soon.